This week, news broke that the Albuquerque Police Department may be preparing to file felony charges against Bernalillo County District Attorney Carrie Brandenburg. Now, according to the Albuquerque Journal, documents allege that Ms. Brandenburg arranged for payment or offered payment for victims in 2 burglary cases possibly linked to her stepson. Ms. Brandenburg denied the allegations and says she was unaware of the investigation until contacted by the Albuquerque Journal. The timing is interesting, considering Ms. Brandenburg had planned to decide how to proceed in a case involving 2 APD officers who fatally shot a mentally ill homeless man earlier this year. So, joining me to talk about this and other top stories of the week, we have Tom Garrity of the Garrity Group. Also joining us is line regular Laura Sanchez-Rive of Sanchez Legal Solutions. We welcome back to the line table this week former State Representative Janice Arnold-Jones. We have reporter Marisa DeMarco here as well. She is web author with KUNM-FM. Janice, these are serious allegations, and the obvious first question, is there any impact you can see in your mind's eye on APD reform, given what Ms. Brandenburg is dealing with here? Any upshot there?
I don't think so.
Right.
Unfortunately, I think it muddies the water because I think the APD investigation clearly had a conflict. Mm-hmm. The DA clearly has a conflict. Right. They're both different.
Explain the conflict in your mind's eye. What's
the conflict is for APD is they are investigating the government employee that they literally answer to. Gotcha. They provide all the information to the DA, and the DA builds the cases. Mm-hmm. I think that is a conflict. Mm-hmm. And should they have turned it over to another entity sooner? Probably something we could debate. Mm-hmm. On the other side, if it is true that the DA offered money to pay restitution, I don't care how good-hearted it was. Mm-hmm. You know, if my child did something like that, you can bet, you know, if they took a candy bar, they were going to pay twice. Sure. That's what parents do. Mm-hmm. But she's the DA. The rules are different.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one too, Tom. How different, though? Yeah, I mean, she is a parent after all. And we've all seen situations where parents are dealing with kids who have drug problems, and it's a very tough spot. Mm-hmm. It's a very difficult position. What's your sense of it?
Yeah, well, as a father of 2 daughters, mm-hmm. You always look out for the best for your children. Mm-hmm. Did she get close to the line? Yes. Mm-hmm. Did she cross it? I guess that's what these allegations, not an investigation, but just an allegation, will finally, show whether she crossed the line or not. Mm-hmm. I think, the lapel cam, to your question, mm-hmm. Really provided some interesting information as far as, the person who was provided the money didn't feel that it was to keep things quiet. She just wanted to make things right. And I think that there is a fine line. But when you get close to that line, as Senator Bingaman used to say, if the line all of a sudden moves, if you better make sure you're far enough away from it not to get caught up by it.
Good point there. Marisa, good to see you, by the way.
Good to see you.
Always good when you're here. I want to stick on this just for, it's just such an interesting thing at everyone's kitchen tables that has to deal with these kind of things. Is there a right way she could have handled this? I mean, she can't dime out her own kid. I mean, she's trying to make things right. How right or wrong is she here?
I think the real reason that this matters is because of the James Boyd investigation that she was about to complete. Right. She said that she was going to complete it at the end of this year or the beginning of next year. Mm-hmm. And so now there's some question about whether she'll be able to do that or whether she has to hand it off. There's a bill that's going to be considered in the next legislative session mm-hmm. about having the Attorney General's office handle all of these shooting cases by police officers. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's an important point to bring up in this conversation mm-hmm. because there's too much closeness that's perceived between the DA's office and the Albuquerque Police Department. And so that bill is talking about removing those cases from the DA's office purview.
Sure, the public would find some comfort with that. What do you make of the idea that APD did this quite purposefully to somehow ding Ms. Brandenburg? What's your gut sense of that?
I have no idea, and it's hard to have conjecture about what's happening behind closed doors or what machinations are in place. Sure. It did strike me that the IPRA request did turn around really quickly. I have some experience pursuing really long IPRA requests with APD, so I was like, wow, that turned around in 3 days. That's impressive. But I don't have any conjecture about whether or not there's any foul play involved.
Absolutely. Your sense of that as well. I mean, people play games. I'm not saying APD is playing games here, but the timing is interesting, as I said in the setup.
Yeah, I mean, I have no reason to believe that it was that there was an intent behind it. Okay. From what I'm looking at, I mean, back to something that Janice said about the police answering to the DA. So, I mean, technically they answer to the police chief and you know, the mayor. But they have a very close relationship with the DA, and all along the lines at all different levels. The police and the DA's office, the prosecutors have to work together on each case. So it's a very symbiotic, you know, mutually beneficial relationship, and one where they share a closeness and they share a lot of information. In a situation where they're investigating the DA's office, I think one of the things during her press conference that she brought up was that she had never been approached or questioned in any way, had no idea that this was happening, which I think would probably, it's easy to understand why she would have that feeling where nobody had contacted her, given that they have so much information back and forth that nobody had said anything. So that, I think, is understandable, but at the same time, you know, you asked, how can she drop a dime on her kid? I think she can drop a dime on her kid. I think we've seen stories of people, you know, using tough love and you know, calling the police on their children, unfortunately, because they've reached the end of their line. And I think there was a report at one point where some of her interactions back and forth with her son over email was that she's felt the safest when he's been in jail. I think the right approach is to let the legal system take care of that situation for her, instead of her inserting herself into a restitution situation and clearly putting her own credentials on the line for that. Because, you know, there's one thing to feel compelled to restitute as a parent when you know your child has done wrong, but to then suggest that they should not, you know, come forward to police or should somehow, that's witness suppression. That's something that clearly should not be done and should not be handled, and I think calls into question her entire administration.
Well, but I feel that, you know, of any public official that I've seen, you know, talking about airing out their dirty laundry, Carrie Brandenburg has definitely led the charge with regards to that. I mean, she has really lived a lot of her personal life out into the public spotlight just because of the nature of her position. Well, here's what strikes me also about the timing of everything. And I'm going to take a hit on this, but the whole Albuquerque Journal story, if they were indeed the first ones to contact the district attorney at 9:45 Friday for a Sunday story, that meant she had less than 6 hours to figure out what was going on. And so, you know, to, you know, put that kind of onus on a public official and not really give them a chance to respond, you know, I don't think that's necessarily in the interest of fair journalism or objective journalism, because you didn't give the person a chance to respond.
Or getting to the facts of the matter
as
well. Did it give you any pause that Ms. Brandenburg was not contacted for this investigation? She was not questioned. Does that taint this in any way for you?
Well, the whole scenario, I think, is odd. And one of the things that has come up is it purely political? I don't even want to entertain that, but I think the IPRA request, the responsiveness to the IPRA request was astounding, astounding. But then I look at Carrie Brandenburg, and if it had been another mother who had offered to pay restitution, I know that the DA would have said, that's good, but the child also has to be dealt with by the legal system. Without exception, she would have said that. And it is unclear to me whether or not she actually tried to make that an exception. And when I looked at the lapel camera video, I thought the questions were unusually leading. And did anybody else feel that way? I thought it was meant to kind of paint her in a corner.
As these things go, does it make a difference to anybody that this fund was being paid out of the young man's trust, so to speak? Was that too fine a hair, Marisa, to say, well, it's a pot of money over here versus my personal money over here? Does that make a difference to you?
You know, I'm not really clear about what the legalities are surrounding paying someone back for something that's stolen. I mean, it's clear that you can't tell people not to call police or not to participate in criminal activities, but I'm really unclear about the legalities of all of that.
Yeah, on that bit of it, let's kind of pull a wide lens here on how it looks.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Where does this all fall down?
I think if you are wanting to paint a picture to make certain allegations, then you've been very effective. If you wanted to play out, both sides of the story, I don't think both sides of the story have had a chance to be heard yet. I think there's enough evidence right now, as far as that's been entered into the public perception, the arena of public perception, that the check from the trust account, that was just one. It's like, what is this all about?
Right.
And you know, there's just enough there that raises question where if all of a sudden the district attorney, as Marissa pointed out, is going to be making a ruling on the James Boyd case within maybe a month, maybe a couple of weeks, you've definitely thrown enough out there to raise question, okay, is it retaliatory or not? And that's really unfortunate because I think that the community deserves a ruling free from any of this type of controversy.
Exactly right. Good deal. Coming up next, a proposed law that could mandate mental health medication and treatment.